So this week we're going to talk about strategy implementation and evaluation. Now what this has to do with is what kind of structure are you going to pick for your organization? What makes the most sense? Should you be networked? Should you be flat? What kind of leadership? Is it going to be distributed? Is it going to be concentrated in a few people? How do all these components work? And also context. What kind of business are you going into? For example, Enron gets a lot of criticism, but Enron actually had a business model that made a lot of sense. And that's that they're in the energy business, and energy is driven by regulatory. So what they did is they invested a lot of money in lobbyists who basically tried to deregulate the industry, and they would target certain strategies. And the moment an industry would become deregulated, they would jump into it before anybody else could. I mean, you can't fault them for that. Then they kind of went off the deep end with all their phony investments and recognizing revenue at the wrong times. But anyway, the question then becomes, as with any strategy, is how do you evaluate it, both quantitatively and qualitatively? And so the issues that come up are things like knowledge management, and that's how do you interpret that, and also how do you manage it? And so it's still what we've talked about. It starts with your vision. Your vision drives your goals, your objectives, and your tasks. And so for all your tasks, you have to go into it in depth and think about, okay, what resources am I going to need? What kind of time frame? And so the collaboration that you put together determines whether or not it's working. And this is where like your KPIs, your key performance indicators are so important. Because you need to set up checkpoints to see how you're doing. Progress reviews, the reason why you have to set it up on a regular basis is for the simple reason. If you don't do it, then you never check up and see where you are. So in terms of structure, what are the things that you need in place? Communication, objectives, your policies, your budgets, and also your best practices. And now, the thing about best practices is, well, if we're really innovative, shouldn't we be doing better than somebody else's practices? But what best practices does is that it benchmarks where you're at, what the best organizations do. So is it good enough for you just to copy it, or should you be creative and try to find a better way to do it? The thing is, you can't innovate everything. And so that's why best practices are so much important. That's the way you catch up quickly, because you find out what it is other people are doing. And so in terms of organizational leadership, how do you get your knowledge workers to commit and get everybody into it? How well do you communicate? The thing is, there's a lot of management speak. My roommate, who was president of a company, released this press release, and he said, well, I believe the synergy between our two companies will be valuable to both of us, and this is a win-win situation. And I was just reading and I was thinking, God, could you be any more boring? And so but the thing is, everybody kind of sounds alike, because you don't want to rock the boat and you don't want to create any kind of controversy, and especially with investors. I mean, look at what's going on with Elon Musk right now. He shoots from the hip, and he's shooting himself in the foot in the process. And so then the question becomes, in order to steer activity, what kind of incentive structure do you set up? When we say incentive structure, it doesn't necessarily mean putting out a carrot. It's also a reward system, and I think reward systems tend to work better over time. Short-term incentives are good if you need something done very quickly, but people appreciate being recognized for the good things that they do, and for you basically saying thank you. In terms of the functional components of your strategy, we've gone over this before, and so here are all the different departments that you have to look at. And you also have societal, legal, and environmental issues you have to be concerned with. Societal issues, meaning what are people sensitive about today? And we live in different times. I mean, the things that like I grew up with today would probably be interpreted as being racist, or some other considerations are like, for example, people drove drunk all the time. It wasn't that big a deal. Now today, if you have an executive who drives drunk, it's probably going to cost him his job. Kids used to hitchhike all the time. Today, that pretty much gets you axe murdered. And so you could see the different differences with the time. Now, in terms of quantitative criteria, naturally there's finances, there's how you're doing against schedule, there's turnaround times, all this kind of stuff. The thing about all these parameters is they're metric. I mean, they're quantitative. There's no arguing with the number. The question is do those numbers correlate to what it is that you want to see? The qualitative criteria includes, an example is in the biomedical industry. We wanted to work on an artificial liver. And then the first question was asked is, how do we make money off this? And as it turns out, you really can't make that much money off of it unless you're willing to, charge astounding prices like Medtronic does. And someone said, well, this will really help our brand because Marcus is an inventive company, and what we'll do for the social good will be really lauded. And then, it was kind of looked down on because, social good doesn't help your bottom line. But also, what a lot goes into these type of projects is how much risk is acceptable. And that's that some companies are very risk averse, and some companies it's like risk is a way of life, like for example for Apple. So data gives you information, and from that information you grow that into knowledge. The thing about information is it relevant, and does that information have a purpose? And that's one thing you see a lot today. People make arguments, and I just kind of look at people and I say, so? I mean, is it relevant to the argument at hand? And so once you have relevant information, then you can put it into context and derive rules and algorithms and other things. And so what knowledge comes down to is what, how, and why. And what is it that you're looking at? How does it do things? How does it actually work? And why should I care about this? Meaning, one of the hardest things is it's easy to find correlation. It's very hard to find causation, though. There's tacit knowledge. Those are the things that people inherently believe in. And then there's explicit knowledge. And those are the things that you can actually report on. And what it comes down to is the processes from knowledge, is how you generate it. How can I capture it? How can I codify it? Meaning, how can I put it in a form that people can understand? For example, in my thesis, I showed one graph, and people looked at it, oh, that's a good piece of information. What they didn't see is each one of those data points took me like 2 days. It's like there's a month worth of information in that one graph, but they're like, oh, that's nice, it's one graph. And this is why you have things like dashboards and everything else, and like customer relationship management systems. And that's how can I put this in a form that's easily digestible, that by looking at it I know what's going on. And subsequently, how easy is it to transfer that information from one person to another? So it has to be in form that is digestible. This is why we manage knowledge, and that's now when that many companies are globalized. How do I share like this information from my division in Seoul? How do I manage change, and how do I do it quickly? The thing about change is people are always skeptical about change. So how can I do this in a credible manner? Downsizing is a big issue. One thing that was really controversial is GE adopted neutron jack welch. They call it the neutron jack because it's like the neutron bomb kills people but leaves buildings standing. But his attitude is that every year you should whack the bottom 10%, that the bottom 10% nobody's going to miss because they're such poor performers. And that's generally true of most large organizations. You can whack 10% off. But then once you go beyond 10%, you're starting to get into the meat and flesh of a business. And that's when it really starts to hurt. The thing is, if I whack off 10% one year and then replace them with, something better than the next year, after a while, you're going to start whacking parts of it that are really going to start to hurt and are going to become counterproductive, because you're going to be living in this culture that's negative all the time. Everybody's sitting around fearing for their lives of whether they're going to be next. That's why I don't particularly care for it, but it's your own choice. On the other hand, guess what? That creates an atmosphere of where you're not going to have a lot of complacency. People are going to be on edge. But here's a little something from a teaching point of view. When I give quizzes, and actually Professor at MIT told us this, he said 40% of this quiz is a no-brainer. If you have any idea what's going on in it at all in this course, you'll get 40%. Next 40% is for people who study. If you study hard, you'll get the other 40%. The last 20% are for people who really, really know the material well. Now, you would expect the class average to be 80 because pretty much everybody's going to study. The class average comes out to be 65 and 70. And why? That's right, people choke. So anyway, you've seen what we've talked about, the 4 steps. And so for your discussion for this week, think about managing knowledge. Think about what it means and post about that and talk about that for this week's discussion board.